paid good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Más lo pregunto con razón, el que arde en mi corazón o el amor de Satanás. ¿Y tu niña? ¿Cuántos dientes tienes? No sabría decirlo. Tomaré los triunfos.
Paraíso quemado.
Lo que pasa es que usted es un niño, todavía refugiado bajo los faldones de su padre. Usted no es hombre, sino un títere.
Ángela, nunca tendré palabras lo suficientemente expresivas para decir cuánto ignoro esta desagradable situación. Sea mi voluntad que lo que no fue en vida sea en muerte.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Join me once again is Mr. Aaron Peterson.
Hello. Good to be back.
Also joining us is Mr. Miguel Llansó.
Hello, how are you?
We continue our look at rare, underseen, or lost films with a look at Rafael Corkidi's Angels and Cherubs. Released in either 1971 or 72, depending on where you look. This was Corkidi's feature directorial debut. He often served as a cinematographer for other directors, including Moctezuma on La Mansión de la Cora and Jodorowsky on El Topo, Fandoilis, and The Holy Mountain. Corkidi also worked quite often with screenwriter Carlos Illescas, and this was their first outing. It is the story of an Adam and Eve tale told through some sort of surrealistic point of view. We'll definitely be getting in here and getting into the details as much as we can. I don't know if we can spoil this film. Might actually be better if you watch this one after hearing us talk. The movie is available on YouTube, or at least it was recently, and the usual bootleg haunts like DVD Lady. Aaron, what did you think of Angels and Cherubs?
I don't know if you should start with me. I found this surrealistic, very artistic in many ways, and not very good. No, I struggled with, I think I understood the visual narrative as it was being told. It felt much more told in visuals and musical overtones than it was necessarily in dialogue or story beats, but it just didn't work for me. I felt like it was a little disjointed and even too vague for what it was trying to do, I guess.
And Miguel, how about yourself?
Well, yeah, it was a very great experience. I mean, when I watch a movie, try to a little bit understand what is it coming from and what is the context it's made and a movement or historical moment, no? And in that sense, I watched it first without reading very much about Corkidi. You know, I knew what you were mentioned, that he was a DP, director of photography of Jodorowsky. And that gave me a hint, of course, of where to go, no? And I found many interesting things in the film, like unfortunately, the copy is, is a print. It was a kind of a video print, not the original 16 millimeters. So it's difficult to appreciate a very beautiful and very mystic direction of photography, together with the landscapes, which are very much of a ruins and abandoned places and decadent places. So that gives a lot of texture, a lot of meaning to the story. And I found it very interesting. And then after watching it, I start reading a little bit more about where is Corkidi coming from and what is this film coming from. So I think giving to the audience a little bit more of context and linking this film to other films from the same time, I think they will probably appreciate it a little bit more and understand a little bit more the type of narrative and cinematography, etc.
Yeah, it's a very interesting film, and yeah, I totally agree. I imagine that a original print of this is going to look really good. I mean, obviously, he's a cinematographer by trade. This is his it's not his directorial debut. He also made a short before this. Some people call it Mexico 68 Instantaneous, I guess is the word in English. And that also is really interesting. That one moves so quickly, and some of the other films that he has done move a lot faster. This one is much more contemplative, much slower, just a few settings. Really likes to use the desert as a setting, and this one starts with that, with this Adam and Eve tale. I was kind of hoping that it would stay with the Adam and Eve tale even longer, even though it was, it wasn't silent because there's a voiceover in that part, and I'm guessing that that's Satan. So we start with this whole fall from grace thing, and then we move quite a few hundred years, and I'm guessing this is it feels more like medieval times, even though there is some modernism to it. I mean, there's one character in here that looks exactly like Erich von Stroheim and something like Grand Illusion, and it's like, okay, I didn't really expect that. But yeah, I'm very excited to try to unpack this movie a little bit more with you guys.
It's very much a philosophical film, right?
Landscapes are kind of amazing, and when they really grab you at the beginning, and you immediately are thrown into a very poetical narrative, but it's not. I agree with Aaron, very, very straightforward. And then you have to hint a bit what is the film about. At the core, I think is when I saw later on desires, I start to see certain pattern, and this is a pattern of the new versus the old. In this case, is the fight of. It's a very classical tale, no? It's the fight of two lovers to escape from the claws of the family, no? Of a very repressive father. So he takes Adam and Eve, and makes it like a medieval story. Adam and Eve take the apple from the tree because they love each other, because they don't want to be eternal, and they offend God, and they have to live as a normal persons, And it's kind of a parallelism with this kind of medieval tale or it's not medieval, because you can see that it's perhaps it's more like 18th century, post-medieval, and more modern. I don't know. It's very difficult to place the film because he uses many elements from many times. But there is this element, of two lovers that offend a father, and they have to fight for their love, and in many ways. So there is a film where desires are predominant. They really want to overcome this control of the father, this control of the society to become free lovers, And I think if you go also to Desires and other movies by Corkidi, there is this revolutionary force that tries to leave behind the old and grab the new and get the new through the passion and through love and through desire.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of themes here. Well, obviously Christianity, starting with the whole fall from paradise thing, but then to have your main characters, Angela and Christian, pretty telling there as well. And there's a lot of stuff that's told through music, or there are very musical scenes. There's a whole scene in there with these monks. There's a marionette in here. and she seems to be being tried for heresy and is eventually burned at the stake. Yeah, a lot of Christian imagery going on through this whole thing. But then also, I think a lot of class stuff as well. Just it feels like Christian isn't as wealthy or well-to-do, I suppose, as Angela. It feels like that might be playing into this too. Like, it's not quite Romeo and Juliet. Does it feel like the houses hate each other, the families hate each other? But yeah, there's definitely that kind of star-crossed lover. We have to get away from my overbearing father type of thing. But both of the fathers seem kind of overbearing. But I wouldn't say that the mothers are slouches either. I mean, one of the mothers, Angela's mother, really is, asking quite a lot of Christian throughout the film.
Yes, it's almost, well, we don't want to spoil it, but it's a little bit vampiresque as well. She sucks the life of the, so there is this presence of the old, sucking the life and the energy of the young people that wants to, desire and love, and they have an erotic. As far as I see in the three films that I seen, there is this erotic force very strong in Corkidi, and he likes to portray naked bodies and desire bodies, and it's very interesting for me because it just opposes, and also in Angels and Querubins, it just opposes this very kind of decadent spaces like churches, ruins, things, constructions that are falling apart and are full of texture, with this very much of a passion and and erotic bodies and that I find it interesting that that this juxtaposition in that only a director of photography can perhaps seen as something powerful. No?
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of tension between the religious and the sensual, the decadent, like you're talking about. I mean, there's a lot of emotion going on between Angela and Christian, but they have to be very repressed through this whole thing. But like even the scenes of them going through the meadow, which should be very, joyous kind of thing, but then they're very quiet. There's not that much dialogue in this movie. And I mean, I remember they're going through the forest at one point holding hands, and they run across this, talking about the religious angle of it, they run across this Jewish man who's in this wooden hut/cage. It looks like he's in a cage at first, but then the camera cuts and you see, I'm pretty sure that it's open on one side. It's almost more like a hut, or what is it in the Jewish wedding story? Like the huppah, just, it's like this makeshift tent that this guy has. And then there are these people that are throughout the entire film where there will be little groups of, it looks like they're women. Again, can't really make out all the details in this print, but it looks like they're women and they're always wearing black. They kind of remind me of all the mothers from like the Shuji Terayama films, like Pastoral to Dying Country. It's just like they're always in the back kind of hanging out, or sometimes they'll be in that kind of courtroom setting, just standing around, and not sure exactly what these folks are doing, but they're like this ever presence.
Worshippers or judgment, something along those lines. I mean,
yes, it's a very also classical in Spain. There's a woman in black, yes, worshippers and mourners, and before it was not only, in towns you can find them very easily. There's this woman almost like a Taliban. That's like, not anymore, but even after the Spanish Civil War, still you were going to the town and this woman totally dressed in black, and you cannot even see the face, and very, dark, and with that very strong presence. No, I think the film has a lot of these images. We can go later on, maybe to try to understand, or what I understood, or what we understood, that where are these images coming? I think yes, the Catholic imaginary of Mexico or Spain, this imaginaries there, that kind of versus the new blood, kind of some sort of a sexploitation, new blood, new energy. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think obviously Corkidi was well informed of what was happening in the world cinema, and he was very connected to Jodorowsky, and he was very connected to many other filmmakers through this magazine that they established in the early 60s called Nuevo Cinema, and New Cinema or Nuevo Cine. They call themselves Grupo Nuevo Cine. I didn't know, but through the movie I started researching and I found out. So they were trying to reform also the Mexican cinema, no, through the novel back, through the French novel back, adapting it to the context of Mexico and to this Catholic repressive environment, but also full of, not only repressive, but also full of mysticism and full of esotericism, no? That is also that you can find in the theater plays of Jodorowsky and Arrabal. So yes, we can go there, but I think yes, these are kind of the main topics, no? Like repression, mysticism, yes, desires, certain sexploitations.
We should probably address the elephant in the room, which is the vampirism.
That was a surprise. That was a surprise.
That was a surprise, yes.
This movie has been talked about in terms of, this Mexican vampire film. And I wouldn't put this as a vampire film. Like right at the end, like 11th hour is when they bring in the vampirism. And then even knowing that and rewatching the film, it really doesn't matter. No, not at all. If you put this in your book of vampire movies, come on. Take it out. Yeah, maybe a little footnote or something. This doesn't need to be included in there. Yeah, it's not that crucial to the plot.
I think it's just a representation of the ultimate evil, right? I mean, that just feels like what they're going for here is just vampires immediately come to mind as that ultimate evil.
Yes, it's they are at the end of sucking your life, sucking your blood, trying to stick with you, to get you under their control. I think it talks more about all of this. It's definitely an esoteric movie, or all the Corkidi's movies are esoteric. So we understand a little bit where is it coming from, this esotericism. Almost like I find certain similarities with Lucifer Rising, for instance, from Kenneth Anger. And so it's the psychedelic times, or already the 70s. And they are, at the end, the sons of a very strong, esoterics that were, Arrabal and Jodorowsky, that wanted to reform the theater, the scene, in Paris. So you have to, see all this context started to start understanding, I think, this kind of vampire images, the images of control, power.
Yeah, I don't know if Corkidi would have considered himself a member of the Panic movement, but it definitely plays alongside of that. And the mysticism, that there's a whole scene in here with tarot cards. I'm just like, okay, that's very Jodorowsky. He loves the tarot. That's all, for me, like Holy Mountain, so influenced by the tarot. And yeah, it's interesting to have this very Catholic movie with a tarot scene in it. And I'm like, okay, it's like people just kind of grasping for whatever is going to try to help them understand the world because they just don't get it. Whether it's praying to God or looking at cards and trying to figure out what the future is going to hold for us.
I think it's in the wave, because Pánico movement or Movimiento Pánico was created in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, I think, if I remember correctly. And it was basically Jodorowsky was already doing his theater plays in Mexico, but he was very, very fan of Arrabal, of Fernando Arrabal, which is a Spanish guy that was in Mexico, in Paris, and he went to Paris to meet Arrabal because he was performing his theater play. The theater plays of Arrabal were very strange. There were no dialogues. He wanted to come to the original meaning of the theater. That's why it's called Pánico, because it's from Pan. And this is like the Pan, the god, and at the core of the theater is horror, love, and astonishment. These three elements that are very, shaking. You have to impress the audience. You have to get the audience totally out of, the audience is not anymore as somebody that is coming to reflect on the text or to see a representation, but to see a happening. kind of the first performance kind of artist or proto-performance artist, late 50s. No? So there is this kind of performatic experience, no, that the audience goes and gets shaken by something that they cannot understand, and very exoteric forces that are coming to talk about the erotic forces, deadly forces, terror forces. And I think I see it totally, the continuation of that. I think Ángeles and querubines is a panic movie. Yes, I think it belongs. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I read it like that. You know, maybe Corkidi would say, no, it's not a panic, but you can see the presence of this poetical view, the experience of the audience. And they are not doing a representation. No, I have been reading that Arrabal was very much inspired by Artaud and by the Balinese, the Bali theater, where again there is nothing to represent but something must happen in there, no? Like a little bit like a voodoo ceremony, no? Where you get inside, and then the members of the cult start kind of being possessed by the different gods to have an esoteric experience. And when you finish this esoteric experience, you have a new knowledge, no? Like, okay, I learned this, or I learned that. You know, if you enter into that, they are made for that, not to have something, a poetical experience that you don't grasp very much the story, but they start taking you through very strange and dark corners, you know, and they try to shake you. And so I guess I will say it's a panic. Would you say it's a panico movie, or?
I saw more of that in his later stuff, like Pafnucio Santo. Like, that movie felt like, okay, this is definitely, you know, what I would expect from somebody who worked with Jodorowsky. I mean, Corkidi has been a fascinating figure to me for years. I mean, I actually tried to reach out a few years before he passed away just to get an interview and just talk to him more, because as far, 2025, there's not a ton of stuff written about him in English. And it's kind of strange to me because he made 4 feature films and then, interestingly, turned to video and started to work in video as his medium, which is very unusual for that particular time. A cinematographer turning to video when video was just not, what it is today. There were a lot of limitations, but he was having a good time, I think, playing with video. And some of his films, like what's Figuras de la Pasión, like that one is interesting to watch, to see like, oh, okay, now he's in this whole different medium and doing this. But his 4 feature films, absolutely gorgeous. I mean, Aaron, say what you like about the plotting of this film, and I tend to agree with you. It's very slow, very contemplative. I mean, there's that dinner scene that goes on forever and nobody says anything. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I think I could maybe enjoy seeing this at a theater a little bit more than watching it at home, just to enjoy the experience and to see the image on a screen, big screen. But yeah, I was just always fascinated by this guy because there was just so little written about him, even though his films are beautiful to look at. And it took so long for good versions of his films to be available. I don't want to say on video, because I mean, these are video files that we're watching, but there aren't, as far as I know, DVDs of these movies, Blu-rays of these movies. I don't know if anybody's ever released these officially on any sort of label, which is, again, just kind of a shame. Like this whole, mini movement in Mexico that is completely, under the rug. I know he is more appreciated in Mexico. And there was a retrospective of his work. If you look out on YouTube, you can see all these clips and people talking about his movies. But, that was from, I think, one festival, not necessarily a, global movement to let's pay some respect to Rafael Corkidi.
Even though the movie wasn't for me, and it's I find it a little too abstract and kind of all over the place plotting wise. You have to admire the confidence of any director that will commit to, like, when I say philosophical, I mean sincerely. It's a very philosophical film. It's very, you read into it what you want to read into it. I'm sure he has a very specific view of what this is, but I don't think you're going to get 5 people that agree on what that view is. I don't think you would have 5 completely different interpretations. And I admire the confidence that it takes to make something like that. So even though maybe I didn't enjoy it at the same level as you guys do, I appreciate what he put into it, because it is something that it's obviously very specific and personal to him. The level of confidence it takes to make that is impressive and commit to it.
It's strange as well. I found it very strange because I tried to find interviews in Spanish. They're not. It's like, how is this possible? Because, okay, even if, not interviews and online. And just the fragments, I found some fragments. I didn't find interviews online. And, even, yes, I think he belonged to, in Mexico, they made a very big effort to reform Grupo Nuevo Cine, the new cinema group, inspired by the Nobel Bags. They made a super good effort to reform the cinema in Mexico and to open this film the film environment to other cinematographies and other films from all across the world. And they pushed for the first film school. This is what I read, the first, the public film school. So they made a lot of reforms in Mexico, and they were a very wide group. They started with a magazine, like it was the Cahiers du Cinema version, Mexican version. They were inspired by that. And one of the numbers was dedicated fully to Buñuel. And Buñuel support them. I don't know how much, but they were kind of saying like, yes, there must be because it was some sort of a golden years in Mexico. They have Buñuel, they have Jodorowsky. There was some sort of a new wave there that was making it. So it's strange that if you see that just as a member of that group, why we don't have good copies or a Blu-ray edition or a DVD, if you consider not maybe the films in their singularity or particularly, but as a part of a group that changed a little bit, the Mexican cinema, no? and the way, and open the way for more experimental films, more philosophical and poetical films, no? Like in many other places during the 60s or early 70s. And it's interesting, yeah.
I have one dumb theory about why his films aren't more readily available. And again, this could be completely stupid. There is a lot of nudity in his films and a lot of child nudity. There is a real thing about that, especially here in the States, where it's just like, I'll be honest. So like, I mentioned Shuji Terayama earlier, and his Emperor Tomato Ketchup has a lot of child nudity. Corkidi also lends the film called Pubertinante, I believe, puberty, basically. Also child nudity in that. There's child nudity in Papnucio Santo. There's child nudity in this one. So where you can find certain films like these are out on eBay, where there are a bunch of fucking perverts who are all into child nudity. Like, that's where you can find your copy of Emperor Tomato Ketchup, is a bunch of fucking creeps trading tapes and selling tapes of this stuff. I don't know how it would fly if suddenly, tomorrow Vinegar Syndrome announces, hey, we're doing a whole set of Rafael Corkidi films. This is going to be fantastic. I think they would get shut down, especially in 2025, get shut down immediately because of child nudity inside of these movies. And I'm like, guys, come on. And especially with this one, child nudity is child nudity, but this one is interesting with Angels and Cherubs because all the kids are Corkidis. You look at the credits of this and it's such a family affair. Like the Adam and Eve are his 2 children. The costume designer is named Corkidi. There's a bunch of Corkidis in the production notes, and it's like, okay, yeah, like this is his feature debut. It is a scrappy film insofar as it feels like it took a lot to get made, and using, come on kids, let's make a movie.
There is a movie, I was thinking about this, well, yes, child nudity, but there is a movie that is pretty much available by James Broughton. It's called This Is It, and it has a similar topic. Like it's the kind of the beginning of the world. It's a very also poetical, and it's a short film. But it has been, really. So I watched it in Rotterdam Film Festival, Rotterdam. And, so it hasn't been the case in many and it portrays the same, some sort of a it's a child that is kind of throwing a ball, and there is a voice talking about kind of the early. It's kind of comparing the beginning of times with a small child, a little bit like the theme of Adam and Eve. So I don't think it's kind of an atom or something isolated in the context of their experimental films of early 70s, but probably it is in the context of the Mexican cinema, because it's true that many of the Jodorowsky movies and his movies were really much censored by a society that or the authorities that were very much into in a Catholic country. Same that it may happen in Spain during the Franco times. So I don't think it's a problem of a world perception, because I've seen that in many American, British, experimental filmmakers that nowadays are, still going around in festivals. But maybe it's just because these labels didn't discover him, because I was talking with my friend here, the experimental filmmaker Kevin de la Cruz, Filipino, and he didn't know about Corkidi, and we are having lunch. Well, not anymore, but we were today having lunch with the responsible of. He's the head of a cinema, the Reina Sofia Museum, which is like the MoMA here of Spain, here at in the other room, and he didn't know about Corkidi as well. So but he had 4 feature films, and and I think there was a broken link there in a very much of a Mexican conservative society, that because it's amazing, there is no information about him. It's really, and just as a member of that movement, as a member of a reformist movement, it's really, really strange.
Well, he's even the cinematographer for Gelson Gass's Anticlimax, which was, I read about that, and film as a subversive art. I believe, I don't know if any of Corkidi's films themselves made it into Amos Vogel's book, but yeah, there were definitely movies that he was related, of course, with the Jodorowsky films and even Mansion of Madness. People should be familiar with him from that. Even just like, he was, the cinematographer. It's a pretty big deal. Cinematographer on El Topo and Holy Mountain and Fendo and Lis. That's a pretty good resume right there. And yeah, the whole thing of like talking about like the experimental films from the Spanish countries and really pushing that envelope, these Catholic countries where it's like, here's child nudity. Here's, I don't know what it is about experimental filmmaking and the death of animals. Like, there's not that much animal death in Angels and Cherubs, thank goodness. But there's pigeon that doesn't make it out of this movie alive, for sure, which is just very, it's not like a slaughterhouse scene or anything that we've seen in some other films. I mean, we just talked about Belle from Hell and that slaughterhouse that's in that movie. Oh my gosh. So it's not that extreme, but it feels like experimental filmmakers in this period of time were just like, okay, give me some nudity and give me some animal death. Let's do it up. And if you can mix the two, even better.
I believe me, I'm not a prude, but I'm going to come across the prude. When it comes to child nudity, I'm a zero tolerance. I just don't find it in any form of art. I don't, because kids, maybe it's the dad in me, but it's the whole that they don't have a say, they don't have agency, they're not old enough to make a kind of decision, and it's forever, that sort of thing. So I felt very uncomfortable watching it. So I think there might be something to that, and I'm very open to any artistic expression. That one I'm probably less open to, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same. So that might be a reason why it's so hard to find a copy. That makes sense to me.
Miguel, you mentioned that it's very hard to find stuff written about Corkidi, and I totally agree. And like one of the things, if you Google his name, is a article from the bedlamfiles.com, a less than admiring take on the films of Rafael Corkidi. So someone took the time to write about Corkidi, but it was, this guy isn't that great. I'm like, okay, thanks. I'm looking for information about this filmmaker, and like, not that good. I'm like, okay. Yeah. I mean, again, you're welcome to your opinion, but it's just funny that that's one of the first listings.
But it's 1961, there is this very conservative film scene in Mexico, that, and and only Buñuel is doing this kind of survival movies that we were talking, and then there is a lot of Cantinflas and all this very commercial movies, and there is a bunch of people that come and try to reform the cinema, no, and this is just for that is important, no? Because they move and they start, pointing at the other stuff, no, and I think this is important. I mean, I don't care if a movie's a little bit better or worse, but how that kind of changed the panorama, and Jodorowsky definitely does. And for me, I don't see very much difference. I don't think Jodorowsky movies are much better than Corkidi's. You know what I mean? It's true that I'm not very fan of Jodorowsky. Why? Because for me, this new cinema comes from to have two legs. One is Buñuel and the other is Jodorowsky. Buñuel, I find it much more funnier. I relate much to him. I think it's more universal. Somehow Jodorowsky is much more esoterical, and Buñuel is more surreal. They come from a different background, and I think Corkidi meets kind of in the middle point of the two. For me, Buñuel is a guy that comes from the surrealist forces, which are very automatic and very, make you laugh. So it kind of links you to people like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, the Marx Brothers, and this kind of finding forms that are very spontaneous. And in this spontaneity makes you laugh. It kind of breaks the expectations that you have for every time. With a deep also sense of psychological understanding or psychological perspective. Meanwhile, Jodorowsky is much more primary. It goes much more to the esotericism, to very occultist forces. It's not that I said, it's because you can read the reference. He's interested in magic. He's interested in first expressions of theater, which are much more to do with the ritual and with so it becomes much more darker and much more cryptic and difficult to grasp. And I think, and this is like, I would say one is esoteric and the other is surreal. And then you find this new cinema of Mexico that kind of, and both in Buñuel and in Jodorowsky, they have the Catholic religion as something to start from, or that's something to oppose, or as something to think, or as an environment or situation. And then you come this Corkidi, and I don't think it's too far away from any of these two. I mean, in the sense that he's talking about the same topics, repression, desire, and he's doing it in a very different way than Buñuel and Jodorowsky did it, because Jodorowsky was more into this comic, world. He was more related to Moebius, to all the people from later on, but from Paris, and Corkidi was using the images from the town. He liked to go to. I read he liked to go to the village and work with local people. Work with, so he had this kind of revolutionary mind, no? And also in the desires, he's talking about all the time about revolution. There is this desire of revolution. So I don't see it so far away. I would like to see a good copy of it, because I think it will gain a lot of strength and power if you see this beautiful cinematography. But I don't see it so far from this movement. So I don't. It's a pity that they dismiss it like, this is a bad copy of Jodorowsky, because he's not at all. He's using decadent spaces in a very special way. He really goes and is rooted in much more, landscapes and people of Mexico than Jodorowsky or Buñuel can do. It has a certain sense of folklore there in the films, and this is, I think, very valid. For me, that is even an historical document, that he was going into this series of villages and filming. Actually, I have an anecdote. My friend Gus van der Bergen, whose wife, he saw Lucifer in Mexico, like in 2016 or 15, I don't remember. And I was talking about Corkidi with him like a month ago in Brussels. And he told me, like, we arrived into the town where Corkidi filmed his movies. I think it was the Sales. He said, like, and they were very scared that if we filmed something here, because the first question they ask is not going to be anything pornographic, right? So they were still, that was this fear, shooting something very...
Still to this day.
Still to this day, they were remembering that Corkidi was shooting their, naked bodies and this type of... So I think he was, probably a victim of that. At the same time, he was inspired by these places and by these people and by this folklore. So he was doing something very difficult, which is kind of, what can I say, esoteric, surreal films, that both are not the same, but surreal, esoteric, using, towns and people and folklore, local folklore, but putting this local folklore in a very difficult place, because the people from that town, they probably didn't like to be portrayed in that way, or so it is a very difficult, and that probably granted a very difficult distribution for the films, and then in a twilight. It's what I imagine. It was what I imagine.
I don't see this film ever being distributed. I see this as like shown in random venues, local businesses, or something along those lines. I don't know you'd ever get wide distribution. There's a lot of concerning thematic material here for some people.
The print that we watched, or the copy that we watched, is, it's kind of muddy. The colors are pretty muted. It's just like, okay, there's probably something prettier here that we're not seeing.
It's unfair, honestly, for the director. It's unfair.
But my God, the print that used to be available of this was this horrible pink, just nightmare. That was the first time I watched this movie. It was almost just like blobs on a screen kind of thing. It was really rough. And there is video out on YouTube of like the restoration, and they have a line down the middle of the screen of like, here's how it used to look, here's how it looks now. It's a shame that this is the best that we've got presently, but so much better than what we used to have. But it is tough to find these movies. It's tough to find them with English subtitles. There's the one that he did. And by the way, Miguel, thank you so much for not correcting my pronunciation of these words. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much for not correcting my pronunciation in English.
So I'm going to try my best with this one. Awandar Anapu, also known as The One Who Comes from Heaven from 1975. That one, no subtitles for, but there are subs for Angels and Cherubs out there. There's Panufio Santo. And then Deseos also has subtitles as well. I'm not sure if Figueres de la Pasión, because it's been a while since I've seen that one, but if that's got subs, to even see all four of these feature films that he shot on film with subtitles, pretty tough. And then to find decent copies, pretty tough. But yeah, Angels and Cherubs seem to be like the one that was the most difficult to find any sort of decent copy. And then finally, a few years ago, I don't know if it was around that festival that they had for him, if that's what helped move this out so that we can now see a semi-decent version of it. But,
The restore it, I read it, because I've seen in YouTube a comparison, and they were restoring Ángeles and querubines. And the copy is not available online because I didn't find it, but I know because I've seen clips of the restored version. And now I'm Googling, I've been Googling, but I have the Google here. There is in Cine, the National Fund of Mexico, they are slowly restoring films, because I've seen it. Here there is an entry from 2023. There is a catalog of restored films, and there are a couple of titles, not the feature films, but the short films. I hope the copies are not lost, because that's another thing that sometimes happens. That you pass it to video, and the best quality video back in time, U-matic video, whatever, and somehow the print in 16 disappears. And then is when you are a little bit screwed, because, I'm sure they will, because it's so easy to restore it. I mean, at least to scan 16, make a new scan, and then work from that. So I think it's just taking time. When I was talking with the Reina Sofia head of cinema, he immediately his ears made like this, like, I want to take a look at that because nowadays it's very difficult to find, those unknown filmmakers. I mean, there are many still in the world, but not so many, even what we consider unknown filmmakers. You go and there is always pretty much information about them, So this is Corkidi is really a kind of extreme case, of this unknown filmmakers, or filmmakers to be discovered, because it's really, there is very, very few things. Yeah.
I want to talk about the subtitle tracks because that is when you're talking about the print and the copy of it. The subtitle track would often be delayed. My wife's Ecuadorian, Miguel. So I had to ask her to come in and watch with me because the subtitle track was coming so late for many of the scenes. And I don't speak fluent Spanish, but thankfully, obviously she does. She's Ecuadorian. And so where the track wasn't coming, I'm like, well, maybe it's not even here. Because, I mean, it would literally come at different scenes like a minute later. And so I would have to have her and kind of interpret what the dialogue was a little bit. So that was, I can see that kind of putting a hindrance on someone trying to watch it and appreciate it if they don't speak fluent Spanish, And also she told me, please do not try to enunciate the names because you're going to get them wrong, Mike, just so you know.
I will. And I did. And I apologize to any Spanish speaking listeners here.
Yeah, that's an advantage because I don't have to read the subtitles. So that I was less lost than you were. I mean, I was more focused. Yeah, because I agree. It's not an easy film. It's very atomized, fragmented, no? And then if you don't have the subtitles and everything, I mean, I was able to follow it, but I had to put my attention. I remember, and I had to find kind of milestones or key scenes. One of these key scenes is, I remember the dinner scene where basically the parents said, like, you are not good enough. You're a child. You are not. If you want my daughter, you have to come with the strength. No, you have to. You have to say your father, this is my wife, no? And if you don't come with this strength, you don't take my daughter, no? Which I find it a very beautiful scene. And also a scene that tells you a little bit what is this film about, You need to be a storm, a light bulb. You need to be a force of nature if you want to take my daughter, I don't give my daughter to a weak guy that cannot face his own father, no? And that kind of key scenes, obviously, if you are able to kind of to understand it and watch it, it gives you a very good hint of what is kind of the ground of the film, no? Which is this battle for passion, love, independence, freedom. It's a very universal topic, no? That I think in all the films of Corkidi, the 3 films that I've seen, it's always there, no? Certain sort of revolutionary spirit, no? Like so that's why I think it's important because he was belonging to a movement that tried to reform, but in the movies themselves they are talking about this revolutionary forces, no, of love, revolutionary forces in.
Well, both families are trying to dominate their children, right? Because his dad won't even meet his Angela's family at one point, which they're just trying to say, like, you guys need to control your own destiny and stop following your family destinies to some degree.
They can't get married until the one father's dead.
And the family of the girl, of the woman, at the end is such a controlative person that she uses her erotic kind of attraction to basically cancel the boy, no, the husband. Is like, no, I mean, you are not going with my daughter, you're going with me, which is like, this is crazy, it's like, so I think it's not so cryptic as it seems in the first place. It needs a little bit of time and also understanding that context, of Mexican, not dictatorship, but it's very important also to understand that, for instance, Corkidi, some years before, he was doing a film about the Olympics. And in the 60s, there was this terrible massacre of students in Tlatelolco. I don't know how many, I think it's like 200 students die, by the authorities. And that's the context where he makes a movie, not only in a conservative society, but a very repressive society that has been killed many students in the context of the Olympic Games, no? And Ángeles and Cherubs is like 3 years later, no, where I think, in my understanding, that was probably very much bubbling, very much boiling. No, what is that Mexico didn't have dictatorship like in Argentina or in Chile or Brazil, but still have a very repressive government. Yes, yes, and I think we understand that we kind of maybe we don't understand the plot of the film line by line or scene by scene, but we understand. Okay, there is this brutal revolutionary force trying to say something here. The young people, they desire, they are gonna win. They are gonna, and I think all of this is there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the mom trying to seduce Christian. I mean, there's so many scenes of, there's the one scene for sure where she leans over and he's just checking out her cleavage. And even when they're getting married, she's got the whole scoop neck thing and no bra, and her boobs are just very much on display.
And she's a very beautiful woman, by the way. I mean, she's like, wow. I mean, I don't know. It's like, I don't know who's more beautiful, the daughter or the mother. No, it's like, this is crazy.
Just showing temptation once again, temptation through this veil.
At the end of the movie, after they get married, Angela brings Christian into this room, and there's this woman on the bed. Is that her mother?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like her mother's almost like a succubus, and she is the vampire. So it's like, yeah, literally draining the youth and trying to have that control over these young people.
I mean, it's Adam and Eve. It's the myth of Adam and Eve, and they fall from the paradise in the moment that they start to feel passions, in the moment that they start to feel danger. In that sense, it's very Buñuelesque.
It's connected to Adam and Eve along, it's a direct connection. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's like you fall into the earth, and then you start living, you jealousy, desires, and this is there, no? And in this case, only love, and then kind of only pure love can take you back to the paradise that I think in Corkidi is this revolutionary force. Passion can be used for good and for bad, in the movies. It can take you to the vampire, to the grave, or it can take you to your love, to be loved. And I think in the movies, I don't think I'm going to see the other two that I haven't seen, but I've seen it, that there is the passion and this strong desires are not used they're used in a very neutral way, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. And then it's up to the real love and to the real, how can I say, like beauty of the characters and internal good that what you can recoup the paradise through that revolution. No? And I think it's there. The temptation is there for this Christian that likes the daughter but likes the mother as well. So that is a temptation, and it's up to him to solve that equation, but without repression. And the moment that you kind of cancel the repression, you open to this wall of desires, very dangerous because you can get lost. But I think it's also a metaphor of that revolution, and that young people is like, don't live with repression. No? Get away from the repression. It's going to be dangerous. Drugs are there. Freedom is not coming. It's coming with a high price. Freedom comes with a lot of dangers. The revolution can derail. You can be killed in that square of Tlatelolco. You can be, but at the same time, it's the only way. Repression doesn't bring anything good. So I think there is very beautiful core in the movies that is this quest of freedom and the dangers of freedom and the dangers of the temptations. It's beautiful in what I've seen, at least there, even if I don't understand really the plot, I don't.
Yeah, I definitely won't claim to understand this stuff. It just poses a lot of interesting questions. I mean, the whole idea of like Eve being the first creature and her creating Adam, I don't know if that's just because Corkidi's daughter was older than the son, so it wouldn't make much sense for the little boy to create this more grown girl, because it plays into the whole thing of the father dies, Christian's father dies, and then that frees him up to get married to Angela. And by that time, he's got the bite marks on his neck. So it's like, okay, it feels like he's already had the relationship with the mother. And yeah, that's like, here we are with the father dies, the mother's the conqueror, and then cut back to, the paradise scene again with that really kind of amazing helicopter shot of the two kids walking this path in the desert. I'm like, where the hell is this path in this desert? And it's just such a stark landscape. Yeah. And then like the Hallelujah chorus plays and the sun is either rising or setting. Is just very, very striking. And I'm like, yeah, I don't understand it 100%, but yeah, I had an okay time with this movie. It wasn't what I was hoping for necessarily, but it definitely was like, all right, it held my attention. And then it did open up other Corkidis for me. So I'm like, okay, yeah. And I have to say, maybe I made a wrong choice talking about Angels and Cherubs rather than, Desires or Pavnuzio Santo or any of these. But it's a good place to start because it's his start. It's his first feature.
No, it's the first, but really, I was Googling and I seen it, that Tlatelolco was some months after the Olympics, and it's still not, there is between 200 and 500 people die, young people die, no? So you don't really, that's the price of freedom, no? That it's in his movies, not the price of freedom, no? Like these students protesting, going there and being massacred. Still, it's not clear how many people disappeared because, the army took the bodies and we don't know yet, like how many people were in total brutal repression of the Mexican army. No? So it's really like they make the film like 2 years later, with this really, and it's the price of freedom, and I see it in that movie. It's not like in this case, is the old generation vampirizing the young people, no? It's really horrible, no?
I'm glad you're here to explain it to me because I was about 40% understanding it.
I mean, it's a connection that came back to me. And I don't know. Maybe you ask Corkidi, do you have the massacre in mind? Maybe say no, but it's impossible, no, because it was something very well commented, and he created a whole movement. Now, the movement was created before, but the student movement against corruption, against it's a milestone. I mean, it's a moment in the Mexican contemporary history that nobody can forget. Nobody forgot now, And if you add, this political context of a student revolution to the type of films and to this movement, I mean, I find it now eye-opening. Now it must be something, about the old and the new, the decadence versus these young people trying to make things move, no?
One aspect I did appreciate that we haven't really talked much about is the use of sound and music to drive the plot forward, as opposed to dialogue or that sort of thing. When you have the crickets at the beginning, and then you have like the musical interludes, and just the variance of music and sound that he uses throughout the movie. I found that very interesting, and I could at least appreciate that to a large degree because it really did keep me invested, even in that long dinner scene that seemed to go on forever. Music and sound was very prominent.
It's ironic because Nacho Mendez's score is easy to get, very easy to get. Like I've bought it on vinyl. I have a copy over here. And then you can go out to Amazon Music and buy the whole soundtrack, download it on MP3 if you want to. Not a problem whatsoever. It's right there for us. So the soundtrack lived farther than the movie has, I think. And it's interesting to me, too. I had no idea, Miguel, about the 68 massacre of these students. I mean, I always talk about 1968. I mean, people are probably tired of me talking about it, but I look at it more at the European angle and the American angle, not the Mexican angle. So I think about, May 68 with the protests in France. I think about the many riots that we had here in the United States starting in 68. Well, not starting, continuing, really coming to the fore in 68, really coming to a head, and I talk about that. I was not aware of that. And I'm sure, the whole thing of the Olympics and the whole world's eyes being on Mexico City in 68, it was probably, oh no, we have to really show force because, I mean, the Olympics become this real hot hotbed. I mean, they have been for a long damn time. I mean, think about Jesse Owens and things, but like, I mean, the stuff that happened in Munich and these things. But yeah, I did not know about the 68 massacre. So that's fascinating. I'm going to have to look more into that.
Yes, me too. Because when I was living in Mexico 1 year, this is something it's still very hot, the topic, because it's really, there's still disappearing people, that families that they didn't recoup the bodies and everything. And it's just a very hot topic. But I forgot, only because it's now coming back to this context in the Mexican history and new movements in art that it came into. I find the relation. I think I read it somewhere, but then I came and say, oh, okay. That's true. That's true. That the massacre was like 2 years or 1 year before he started the shooting, no, something like that, and must be probably influenced because before he didn't make any film. No, it's more 70s when he started.
I mean, I'm sure that the U.S. has disappeared people before, but now it's really becoming a very popular thing. I mean, we are disappearing people like crazy these days, whether they go to jail in San Salvador or, Guantanamo Bay. But now America has joined with this whole idea of just disappearing, potentially threatening people with fake tattoos on their hands. It's great. It's a great time to be alive.
It's true. And I was talking with I always, before the podcast, like to, test my ideas. And I talked yesterday with my director of photography, Israel, about movements and student movements. And, because what I like to see these films in a certain movement in the certain context. No? And we were thinking if there are movements nowadays or not, Like there are many political movements that are these movements bringing also certain aesthetics, like us. And we were mentioning parallelly to the new Mexican cinema, Brazilian Tropicalia and the new Brazilian cinema, no? Besides the Nobel back in France, but in the context of Latin American cinematographers, no? And it's something that I don't know very much. And through Corkidi and through this Grupo Nuevo Cine and my recent trip to Brazil, I really want now to explore, like this relation between new cinema, revolutionary, group of students protest, and in the context of the 68 or 60s movements, or late 60s movement, which is very, very, very interesting. So thanks to Corkidi, it makes me go into that direction. Like we should discover a little bit more the new cinemas of Latin America.
Even though it's, like I said, it wasn't for me, is the way I always like to phrase it when it's something that doesn't speak to me personally. I think there's a lot in here to break down and kind of go through. And if it creates an excitement about a filmmaker that you don't really know, I think you should at least check out his work.
All right, we're going to take a break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
You see, there's pain when we come into the world at birth, so it's fitting that should be pain at the end of it. It's sort of transfiguration, a completion of an equation. It is the final measure of bravery to stand up to death. Exquisite anguish.
That's right. We'll be back next week with a look at Johnny Depp's sole directorial credit, The Brave. Until then, I want to thank my co-hosts, Aaron and Miguel. So, Aaron, what is the latest with you these days?
The Brave's an interesting movie, so that's cool. I look forward to hearing that one. I am still doing The Hollywood Outsider. It's a weekly podcast on film and television. Comes out every Friday now, and that's at thehollywoodoutsider.com. And I do a true crime-based podcast as well, where we look at the truth behind films that are inspired by true stories. It's called Inspired by a True Story. That's also, you can find that at thehollywoodoutsider.com. And I also do Presenting Hitchcock, where we look at Hitchcock films. We've done all Hitchcock films. Now we're doing Hitchcockian films.
And Miguel, how about yourself?
Well, I'm finishing my tour with my latest movie, Infinite Summer. And I've been recently to a very nice festival in Brazil, at Fantaspoa, and Genre Fest. I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to Bilbao, another Genre Fest, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to new projects, and I'm started to, thanks to these trips and other things that I'm reading. We were mentioning the other day, like Mickey Mouse, in the 60s, corporative or corporations in the US, and how that kind of reflects in Latin America. That's something may be very interesting to discover and to work with for the next months.
I've heard about that festival in Bilbao, and it sounds amazing.
Yes. It's, there are like 2 or 3 genre film festivals in Spain. The biggest one is Sitges, obviously, and one of the first in the world. It's 50 years old, Sitges, so very nice festival. But there are other small ones, like one in Malaga, very nice one, and this one in Bilbao.
Best of luck to you. Break a leg.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you again, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They are all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world.
Inventó el señor a Eva. Eva inventó a Adán. Juntos inventaron el juego. De los juegos, el del fruto fue el mejor. Pasado el tiempo, descubren que el paraíso no existe. Y antes de inventar el mundo, los niños el paraíso quemaron. ¡Ángeles!